Not even a month after the release of the first Resident Evil, work began on a sequel, and as we found out in our last video, this game never saw an official release in spite of being nearly 90% complete. Lucky for us, Resident Evil 2 proved to be a hard project to keep down. Eventually making its way to our PS1s, RE2 was everything a Resident Evil fan could hope for. More weapons, more characters, better graphics, and a boatload of improvements on the classic survival horror style. In a word, this game was as close to perfection as any game could be. What's up guys, I'm Jared from Avalanche Reviews, welcoming you to part 2 of the Resident Evil Retrospective. Resident Evil 2 hit North American PlayStations in the beginning of 1998 and made an impact worthy of such a gaming icon. Not only did it sweep the charts as the fastest selling game in America, but also grossed more than both Final Fantasy VII and Mario 64. To say that RE2 did well would be an understatement, but instead of gushing over how popular it was, let's focus on the real question: why? Resident Evil 2 is what I like to call a perfect sequel. Everything that made the first game great has been improved on, and every new addition falls right into place with that familiar Resident Evil feel. Thanks to a falling out between production staff, director Hideki Kamiya would take full creative control of the project, and I think this was a good move. As we'll see in later entries in the retrospective, Mikami can't really be trusted to work on Resident Evil sequels, as his go-to move is to throw the baby out with the T-virus infected bathwater, but we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning. Resident Evil 2 takes place a mere 2 months after the events of RE1 and is set in Raccoon City. Not long after the return of the surviving STARS members, the city has come down with a bit of a zombie problem. You play as either new recruit to the RPD, Leon Kennedy.
Yeah, first day on the job. Great, huh? Name's Leon Kennedy. Nice to meet you.
Or Claire Redfield, who's in town searching for her brother Chris. Yes, that Chris. Both of which have just arrived in the city, completely unaware of the current Living Dead infestation. After a chance meetup, the two decide to stick together and make their way to the police department. Showing that not even an 18-wheeler exploding will keep them from their destination, our two protagonists decide escaping the city is the only option, and if they can rescue a few survivors on the way, well, that's great too. The story here is one that shows a real desire to up the ante. Obviously, the premise of escaping a series of buildings filled with the undead is nothing new, but the simple change of setting from a dark, desolate mansion in the hills to a police station surrounded by tall buildings and city streets just feels like a natural upwards progression. The characters this time around are a little more fleshed out and complicated, having more opportunities to show off their personalities. Leon's altruistic, bright-eyed view of the world might be a bit annoying, but it sort of fits a rookie cop just starting a career in law enforcement.
I told you, it's my job to look after you.
Claire doesn't ever outright say it, but her dedication to her brother is pretty obvious from her willingness to face the zombie horde just to find him.
Chris, I have to find you.
Of course, this is all helped by voice acting that somehow doesn't make you grit your teeth through every cutscene. I mean, it still sounds a little unnatural, but going from this...
That's why having STARS nosing about is so inconvenient.
...to this...
Look, if you want to live, then you're gonna have to leave with me.
...is a clear jump up in quality. This game also ups the number of characters you'll come across during your escape, with the addition of Sherry Birkin and Ada Wong, the latter of which is completely canon if you're going strictly on files found in the first game. Among them are a score of other survivors who not only fill out the story, but also make a pretty memorable impact on each scenario's playthrough. I'm not sure why, but the story in 2 always felt like the pinnacle of Resident Evil storytelling to me. Almost like the second game really set the mold for what these games had to accomplish going forward. The idea of an American city swarming with the Walking Dead fits right into all my favorite old zombie flicks, and the struggle of these two people to stay alive in what is essentially a localized zombie apocalypse is one that really resonates with me. Of course, story is nothing without gameplay to back it up, and with that there's good news and bad news. The good news is fans of the first game will slip right into 2 without an issue. The bad news is, people who don't like tank controls, puzzle solving, and exploration probably won't appreciate all the improvements to be found here. Controlling Leon or Claire is still done with the dreaded tank controls, and I still don't really see why people hate them so much. As far as exploration goes, little things like zombies breaking through windows and replenishing enemies in certain areas keep the backtracking from feeling boring. and the same old ridiculously elaborate puzzles feel even more oddly out of place in a modern building. Leon and Claire's scenarios essentially take place right on top of each other and sometimes intermingle. For example, taking some items in your first playthrough means they won't be available in the next one. Beating the game opens the opposite character's B scenario, which is essential for getting the full story and the true canon ending. This edition really adds some replay value here. Each character's B scenario starts from the opposite side of the gas tanker crash, and this means making your way into the precinct from the top down. This also means key items will have their placements changed around, and the same goes for enemies. There's also some unique cutscenes to watch and an entire new bad guy to deal with. This bioweapon is a hulking badass who clearly paved the way for another 9-foot-tall persistent annoyance we'll talk about in the future. The differences between the two main characters aren't quite so pronounced as they were in the first game. Sure, there's still completely different stories, weapons, and cutscenes, but this time around I didn't feel much of a difference in how many hits I could take as Leon versus Claire. Graphically, RE2 is a huge step up from its predecessor. You can tell the team had a much larger budget and a greater understanding of the platform too. Character models are pushing way more polygons, and if you're a video quality nerd like myself, you may have noticed that the dithered or checkerboard effect is no longer used on shadows or dark colors, making color gradients look a lot smoother. The zombies have also been given a major overhaul, which you know I love. Each one of these guys looks much more detailed with bloodstains and visible wounds, which is great, but the biggest improvement in my eyes is the huge variety to be found. Even though you're still likely to find a couple of duplicates in each area, it's a little easier on the eyes when they're mixed in with a big group of varied rotting corpses. Back again are the amazing pre-rendered backgrounds, and along with everything else, these have seen a massive improvement. Each screen is wonderfully detailed, and even though they're forced down to the PS1's native output of 240p, you can tell the individual renders were of a much higher resolution. Apparently a little too high res, as each and every single pre-rendered screen took about 2 to 3 weeks to render out on top of the line workstations at the time. Of course, artifacts can still be seen in dark areas, but that's to be expected of the high level of compression required to get all this stuff on a CD. Since much of the Resident Evil experience is shaped by sound, I'm happy to say that this is some of the best you're going to find in the series. Masami Ueda has crafted an insanely creepy OST with really moody sounding tracks that stick to the original's more ambient style, and just like the original, the songs always feel right at home in the areas they appear in. Walking into the RPD for the first time just feels right, and the theme for the sewers has an echoey reverb effect that works perfectly to immerse you in the environment. As you probably know by now, it's not an RE game without a boatload of ports, and in this sense, Part 2 falls right in line. Not long after the original PS1 version came a PC port that allowed for more than tripling of the original 240p resolution, but as I can assure you from personal experience, it was a buggy mess when it first came out, and running it on modern hardware only exacerbates the problem. If you want a higher res experience comparable to the PC, the Dreamcast port is the safest bet. Not only does it run at a crisp 480p, but it also retains all the extra content from the PC version, like unlockable art and the DualShock version's extreme battle mode. Also, your condition is displayed on the VMU's LCD screen, and that's just awesome. Of course, there's the N64 port, which is world famous for merely existing. Having to deal with the disgustingly blurry and intentionally gimped video output on the N64 does have its upsides though. First off, there's a reworked soundtrack that somehow has a higher sample rate than the original, and of course there's the novelty of watching CG cutscenes streamed from a cartridge. Then of course there's the Gamecom version, but we don't talk about that one. Without a doubt, this sequel surpasses the original in every single way, and for me at least, is the RE game that all others should be judged against. With a huge jump up in quality, but a rigid adherence to the style created by Part 1, Resident Evil 2 is without a doubt my absolute favorite entry in the series. Now I'm willing to admit this may be due to a bit of nostalgia, but there's another component at work here. Even though the Resident Evil series is pretty vast at this point, RE2 was in a sweet spot, where the formula still felt fresh and innovative. But even if you don't agree with me, it's hard to deny the importance of this landmark entry in the series. In very simple terms, no matter which version of this game you can get a hold of, see that you do it immediately. It really is an experience worth having, and in my opinion, the best Resident Evil game you're likely to get your hands on. Well guys, thanks for hanging out for another entry into the Resident Evil Retrospective. If this is your first time stumbling onto this little project, make sure to follow the links in the description or click right here to check out the rest of the videos in the series. And if you're looking to see me stray from the numbered entries in the series, consider donating to my Patreon. If I reach my funding goal there, I plan on diving into the near-endless spin-offs in the RE universe. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you right here next time on the Resident Evil Retrospective.